So our first presenter today, I am not going to introduce because she's introduced herself. And by the time she comes up to this podium, she may have changed her name again. I'll just give you the title. Am I too late for the party? Answering the call after 60. Our no name presenter.
Good to have humor. Thank you, Dr. Clark. Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to Grad Projects 2025. Hi, I'm Jane Bain. I'm from Caledonia, Ontario. Greetings to those watching online. I know a number of my friends are there. And a special hello to my family, those in the Princeton-Etonia Pastoral Charge, and everyone else I had told about this. And some are graciously online. Hello to the faculty, the staff, visitors, and my classmates. A special thank you to the Reverend Ken and Dr. Jody Clark and the Reverend Dr. Ross Bartlett for their mentoring and their support. The question for my research project is, am I too late to the party? Answering the call after 60. My methodology for this research project was phenomenology. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation this morning, as I am the PowerPoint presentation. I am 60 and I am in ministry. I had the privilege of being accepted to the Atlantic School of Theology as I turned 66. The day I received my letter from AST and the Reverend Dr. Rob Fennell, I scanned my retirement papers to Human Resources at the Grand Dairy District School Board, and 3 weeks later was my last day. When I informed my family and friends I was answering my lifelong call and entering seminary, I was greeted with a mixture of acknowledgements. Congratulations, of course. You just retired. Why don't you want to stay home and relax? Why would you finish one career and want to go to school and do homework? You want to start school at your age? And someone from the Office of the United Church of Canada said, well, I hope I get 5 years out of you. I didn't laugh. These comments did not match my excitement and frankly made me feel very aged. Ageism is ugly, and it's when it's directed right at you, it really hurts. But this is a practical view in some societies. I would like to look at a biblical view as well. Reading A Biblical Perspective on Aging and Old People, authored by Dr. David E. Richmond, he states, quote, in the utilitarian school, persons are researched for their life form and value. As philosophical ethicists Joseph Fletcher, John Harris, and Peter Singer argue, human life per se has no value over any other life. Only a sentient being, that is one who can value his or her own existence, is regarded as a person, end quote. A life lesson valuing everyone is from Acts 2. All the believers were together and had everything in common. Selling their possessions and goods, they gave to anyone as he needed. It would be wonderful to have only spiritual principles governing our lives. They can open our eyes to the needs around us and to the practical ways in which we can meet those needs. Understanding biblical perspectives and spiritual principles on aging can help us to mitigate the negative aspects of aging. I have been curious if others experienced the reaction I received when they were entering seminary. I specifically chose the age of 60 for this study. I began this grad project with a bias, and I have been taken on a 180 turn through my research. The responses of my participants have transformed my bias to a positive outcome. I have 4 participants for the study, and prior to my study, I did not know any of them. Throughout my presentation, I am going to refer to my participants using pseudonyms. Today, I have 4 themes for you: rising energy, obstacles, personhood, and relationships. Energy rising. I wanted to delve right into how my participants felt when they were entering ministry and seminary after 60. The energy from each participant was similar. However, when I was collecting the data, I sensed a rise in excitement with each expression. Tim began this uprising emotion by telling me it was a natural step as he had been in church all his life. Sally was quick to answer, it was fun, loved every minute. Gordon found it a new experience in faith. Other comments by the participants indicated a privilege, an awesome, mind-blowing, and Sally affirmed she was fired up about God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. You can feel the energy rising through the words of the participant. This brings to mind the story of Simon, Peter, and Andrew's call. I have an image in my mind of Jesus being on the shore and saying to Peter again, put your net in the water. And suddenly the fish starts coming in, and more fish, and more fish. When we think of the excitement of that day and the dynamic expressions from the participants, the energy for entering ministry after 60 is rising. To reinforce these positive attitudes, when asked if there were any doubters, 75% said no. Gordon was told by a few people, it's about time. And Diane experienced all affirming conversations. Sally, although she did have one member who was not supportive, came to be in a community of people who were not surprised by her decision to enter ministry after 60. I find the fact that there were affirming conversations to be a positive force for mature adults to make such a monumental decision. The statistics given by the World Economic Forum in an article entitled, How Age-Friendly Universities Can Improve the Lives of Older Adults from 2023, states, quote, by 2030, more than 1.4 billion people across the globe will be at least 60 years of age. This number will shoot up to 2.1 billion by 2050. At this point, there will be more people age 60 and older than those 10 to 24. These dramatic demographic shift prompted the United Nations and World Health Organization to declare the 2020s as a decade of healthy aging, end quote. I stand today in an age-friendly university, conveying to you energized comments from aging, healthy ministers. As Justin Chung-Ting Chu et al. Stated in their report on Eliminating Ageism in Higher Education, an Intergenerational Participatory Co-Design Project, states, quote, an important element to tackle in population aging is ageism, end quote. This report defined ageism as, quote, stereotyping, prejudice, or discrimination toward people on the basis of age, end quote. Kirsten Weir states in the American Psychology Association article, aging is one of the last socially acceptable prejudices. Quote, ageism is a stubborn prejudice. People of all ages show bias against older adults, though the way they express it changes over the lifespan. Among younger people, the preference of other younger people is more explicit. In older adults, the preference becomes more implicit, end quote. According to Weir, the older people are referring to their demographic age group as out of touch, name calling, and making jokes to imply that they have less value, less worth, and less respect. If this is a general feeling of the older segment of population, then why did I have 4 vibrant ministers in my study, entering ministry, answering the call, over 60? The energy rising I experienced from all 4 participants was again reinforced when asked if they had difficulty studying with for the most part, a younger cohort than themselves. The energy started to rise again with their exclamations of a real privilege, a wonderful experience. Diane was quick to say, I loved it. And all participants were invigorated with accompanying smiles on their faces when they responded. Although the participants have had a positive outlook being in ministry over 60, there were some obstacles along the journey. Obstacles. Augustine was known for his belief in a theory of the church, as he states, quote, the church is not meant to be a pure body, a society of saints, but a mixed body, corpus paroxysm, of saints and sinners, end quote. One aspect of the United Church of Canada and the Atlantic School of Theology is that there is a mixed body. Another way to say this is there are people who are different from one another who are answering the call after 60. Half the participants noted that there really weren't any obstacles, and half noted there were difficulties. In Ontario, we have a saying about the seasons. We have winter and we have construction. In construction, as we journey through life, there could be roadblocks, wait times for directional traffic, or detours, all of which could make us want to turn around and go back. However, we were committed to the destination. This is the journey half the participants experienced. When talking about ageism and negative stereotypical attitudes towards older adults, Chung et al. States, quote, some of the most widely shared stereotypes of older adults are the 3 Ds, where they are perceived as dependent, depressed, and demented, end quote. My observation of the 4 participants is that they're independent, jubilant, and rational. In half of my data, the problem answering the call after 60 involved the bureaucracy of the United Church of Canada. The vision of the United Church of Canada states, called by God as disciples of Jesus, the United Church of Canada seeks to be a bold, connected, evolving church of diverse, courageous, hope-filled communities, united in deep spirituality, inspiring worship, and daring justice. This statement speaks of a diverse church, a church which embodies a variety of people, thoughts, and deeds. Within the diversity of people are those over the age of 60 seeking to become ordained ministers. The United Church of Canada is open to diversity in their communities, which also pertains to the ministers, and yet there were obstacles identified in the process to becoming ordained by the bureaucracy of the church, specifically the candidacy board. I had conversations that were very courageous by 2 participants. There was identified ageism during an interview, creating, excuse me, confusion and a barrier between an interviewer and the candidate. Sally told me of a time that she and her support worker went for an interview. And after the interview began and Sally was answering questions, another interview turned to her. And as Sally stated, he directed his question to my support person. And she said, I'm not the candidate. Sally's the candidate. I'm the support person. This scenario occurred a second time in the same interview. Relaying this story to me, Sally continued to say, number 1, does this man have a memory problem that he can't remember who this is? Or is he just of the mindset that someone with white hair can't be a candidate? When our conversation concluded, Sally said, I came out of there and said to my friend, my support friend, those people are making a decision about my life. You know, those people are deciding whether I go forward or not, and they don't even know who I am. They can't even get it straight that I'm the candidate. How confident am I that I know that they know what they're doing? I was really upset. I was angry. Sally felt exiled from her path and waiting for a decision. This brings to mind the message in Ezekiel 34, speaking of the exile of the covenanted people of Israel. In returning to the healing oasis by Sharon Moon, she quotes prophetic analysis by Walter Brueggemann, stating, "Exile is when one time is over and another has not yet begun. Exile is also where we recognize that our own resources, our own abilities to control our situation have reached their limits, and where we are forced to rely on the radical freedom of God's Spirit," end quote. Coming from that interview, Sally was relying on God's Spirit to be with the interview team. Obstacle comes in many forms. A detour appeared when community service in pastoral care and counseling was not considered credible. Tim Scorer states about experience in the emerging Christian way, quote, "In shaping language, our ancestors found that we needed a word to represent our capacity to try things out, to test them, and then to notice what we have done. And so in English anyway, the word experience came to stand for that," end quote. As we experience being with people, being in conversation and or consultation with others, Scorer concludes, experience, quote, "Experience has a significant connection to our innate tendency to be reflective. It's not in us to just do. We also have to notice our doing to stop doing it, to think about what we've done, to imagine what else we might have done, to notice the impact on us and others of our doing, and to make notes to ourselves about how we will do it the same or different in the future," end quote. Gordon came to the candidacy board table with experience. Gordon finished this part of our interview by stating, "It's the UCC project process. They don't give us mature, older candidates credit for life experience." During the interviews, many concerns were raised about the candidacy process. With the rising number of mature adults entering ministry, there are at least 4 of my candidates I have encountered in the mature age category, perhaps there should be some new discernment around the interview process. The feelings of being in limbo, being kept in the dark, brings to mind from the scripture from Luke 11:34, and it reads, "Your eye is the lamp of your body. If your eye is healthy, your whole body is full of light. But if it is unhealthy, your body is full of darkness." What did Sally and Gordon see? Confusion, unfair treatment, ageism? They were on a dark journey at this point. They needed to be brought into the light of kindness and fairness and honesty and acknowledgement of their values. The scenario with the obstacles pertaining to the candidacy board brings to mind the story of Jesus being driven out of the synagogue to the cliff, where the people in the synagogue just didn't want to hear him. The end of this theme is walking us to the next theme. And just as Jesus was in a place of waiting, so were the 2 participants. The 3 of them moved confidently to the next step along their journey, as I move to the next theme, which is personhood. In the article, Biblical Model of Personhood, Dr. Philip Irving Mitchell states, quote, "At the heart of biblical notion of personhood is the belief that human beings are the image of God," end quote. Where is the image of God in personhood? Is it in the conscious, the will, the reasoning, our imagination? Being included as part of the image of God has many aspects. One facet, according to Mitchell, says, quote, "Humans are relational beings created for mutuality and joint service," end quote. The self-reflection of each participant recognized there was an effect on their personhood, and the data revealed that it was a relational manner. Gordon said, "It took me to a more authentic self." He felt he was serving others in a more authentic way. Sally had a deeper sense of purpose and caring in life and says, "I was more aware of the presence of the Holy Spirit in my life and wanted others to feel that way." Diane recognized what the word reverend meant to people and saw a level of respect in her circle. She also felt that she was seen as God's representative here. Tim realized God is with him always. God has a plan and we make choices. Tim felt he was called to live out Matthew 11:28. Come to me, all you who are weary and are carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. All the participants held their head high with integrity. Muriel Betchel, author of Speak, Lord, for your servants are still listening, calling and vocation in the last third of life, states, quote, aging well involves achieving a sense of integrity and wisdom. Asking other people about their calling invites them to a deeper integrity, to find ways to be true to their God-given identity and their baptismal commitment as they enter later adulthood, a stage that could constitute a third of their life. Asking about calling at this stage of life recognizes the wisdom God has given older people through their life experiences, and it invites them to continue to be a blessing to others, end quote. Can you hear the United Church doctrine? As soon as I read this, I thought, that's the new creed. I hear we are called to be church, to celebrate God's presence, to live with respect in creation, to love and serve others. Listening to each of the participants speak of their personhood, I see God's presence in their relationships and the force that energizes them to follow their call. Relationships. As I was coding and bringing together the data from various questions I asked the 4 participants, relationships with people, colleagues, family, God, those in communities of faith, and those they meet on their daily sojourn became an important aspect to this grad project. An article from the Ontario Psychology Association titled "The Psychology of Relationships, Connections for Better Well-Being" states, quote, in our fast-paced, hectic lives, how often do we take the time to reflect on our relationships, what it means to be in relation to another, and how our relationships are serving us or not, and how we are showing up as active participants in the creation of healthy mutual relationships, end quote. Ephesians 4:29 reminds us, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. I have 2 perspectives to present from the data analysis. I will speak of the participants being in relationship with people and with God. 2 very distinct conversations. But will they meet? Will they be relational to each other? A simple question I posed to the interviewee in the interview was, on this journey, what was helpful? The gate opened and all the participants began speaking enthusiastically of their relationship with others. Tim stated, just being present with people. This was a gift Tim brought into ministry from his days as a teacher and his involvement with students. Diane spoke of her relationship with family and colleagues. I was moved when Gordon spoke of prayer, and he told me, it centers me and helps me to think beyond myself, to think of how he can be helpful for others. An element for Sally was a clergy colleague speaking with her, recognizing her gifts and skills, and suggested she look at AST and the summer distance program as she felt called to ministry. There is a giving and a receiving in these relationships. In giving and receiving, they acknowledged an appreciation, affirmation, and confirming their call. For this, they gave praise and adoration. All 4 participants had been a part of the community of faith during some or all of their life before entering seminary. I believe being in a community of faith, of learning, praying, knowing, and deepening their relationship with God allowed them to become motivated to reach out to others, recognizing that God's love had been a transformative element in their life. They all expressed a newer relationship with God as they answered the call after 60. Tim felt God was an energy force. Diane could feel a God nudging her, and these encounters resulted in joining the United Church of Canada and a candidate for ministry. Gordon drew deeper in his relationship with God and the Trinity. This newfound connection enabled him to be more open to Scripture and how he perceives the Word. I can feel a newfound vigor when the participants spoke of God and their relationship with the Holy. When the participants became aware of the deeper relationship with God and God's love, they were energized to share it with people in their circle of life, their communities of faith, families, and neighborhood. It positioned them in a serving relationship as well as a teaching relationship. The story of Jesus visiting the home of Lazarus, Martha, and Mary comes to mind. Martha, busy being hostess to Jesus and the disciples. However, Mary sat down and listened. Martha voiced her disapproval and wanted Mary to assist her. In Luke 10, we hear, but the Lord answered her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things, but few things are needed. Indeed, only one. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her. The most important place for Mary that day was to be in community with Jesus and the disciples and building her relationship with them. There is a weaving together of our two perspectives of relationships, one being with people and the other with God. People's relationships with God empowers them to plant where they live. Sal Aguilera writes in his article, Being Present in the Moment, of a quote from Rabbi Harold Kushner's book, Living a Life That Matters. Quote, when Martin Buber, a great Jewish philosopher and theologian, was asked, where is God? He was wise enough not to give the cliche answers. God is everywhere. God is in churches and synagogues. Buber would answer that God is found in relationships. God is not found in people. God is found between people. When you and I are truly attuned to each other, God comes down and fills the space between us so that we are connected, not separated. End quote. You can see God connecting the participants to people in their community pool. Some participants reached out to others, and others reached out in relationship to the participants. God was present between the people when that event occurred. The relationship with God is the primary connection. Having a deep relationship with God is a transcending factor in the relationship with humanity. In conclusion today, am I too late for the party? The personal conversations and data reveal no. I have discovered in this research project that participants feel being in ministry after 60 is invigorating, inspiring, awesome, and mind-blowing. The positive energy flowing from the participants does not match the research that many have done on ageism. These mature adults grew deeper in their relationship with God, experiencing the force within them. Being involved in this project introduced me to 4 ministers who are independent, jubilant, and rational. Today, we are reminded of the story of Abram. As written in Genesis 12, we hear these words. Now the Lord said to Abram, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. God calls us at all ages. I appreciate you being here today. Thank you so very much, and I believe we have time for a few questions.
That applause almost matched your enthusiasm. Almost.
Good.
We have time for questions, and there are also, for people who are online, they can send it to the chat, and I'll look at those questions, and we can go for those. So one question online: what was the age range of your participants? Ah,
I truly do not know, but I know they were all over 60 when they were in seminary and over 60 when they were ordained.
Yeah.
I do not know the end age at all.
doesn't matter, doesn't it?
No, no.
Comments, questions?
Katie Luke, classmate friend. Can you hear me okay?
Not well.
No,
It's on.
it's on. Yeah.
What if I keep it?
Your outdoor voice, Katie.
So, Jane, you can't be late to the party when you are the life of it. And so my question that I've come to is in thinking of our candidacy board process and how this study can possibly inform them. My regional minister recently told me that they will be evaluating this process for us in the coming years as they're evaluating the overall new structure for the church at this time. Do you have any practical advice or questions that the candidacy board should consider when going into this process, keeping in mind the diversity of our clergy?
Well, I think that's exactly what it is, keeping in mind the diversity of our clergy and just recognizing who's in the room. And I at this point, I really can't say too much more, but according to the participants, there should be a review of the process. Yeah, yeah.
Dave Simmons, I'm a faculty member here. Jane, thank you so much for your presentation. I have a question and a comment related to each other. First is the question. Maybe it's a comment and then a question and a comment. It's a question sandwich. And so the first comment is that I'm a little surprised by the candidacy board comments that participants made, considering the context of United Church congregation skews older. So that's my first comment. My question is, you talk about the relationships, but I'm wondering how the context of the congregations that these folks were in were related to what they said, because I imagine they would be right in that heart of the demographic, maybe even on the younger side in some churches. And then my question from that is, or my comment from that is, I'd be curious to see how ageism is also at play with those who go into seminary right out of their undergrads, who are very young in our classes, because as you said, look at AST, we don't skew young. And so those who come to AST in their 20s tend to be very young. And I'd be curious about how they might actually find some camaraderie with some of the older folks who are experiencing ageism in a different way.
Well, Dr. Simmons, you're doing grad projects next year, and I hear 2 great grad projects right now. I'm sorry, I just, people listening. Interesting for the, I can remember, I am, over 60. Interesting, their first comment about the congregations. My one participant, we were done, and the last question is always, do you have any questions for me? And the one question was, are you interviewing congregations who have called or had an appointment of somebody over 60? And I said, that's another grad project. That's a great question. I did not, in my focused time, have time to relate to congregations, but I think that's a great question. Am I kind of going where you're asking on that? Yes? Okay. And I think that's an important question. It's a good follow-up to this. And I'm not, I'm commenting on ageism because it's there. But yeah, we have older congregations that in my experience of congregational life around Southern Ontario, I'm sometimes the youngest in the room. And so it would be interesting to see in terms of younger students. I believe we need more. Katie's laughing. But thankfully, we have this facility, and I'm sure Emmanuel and Vancouver, I'm not dishing them, but I am standing here in an age-friendly. But it would be interesting to look at the concept of a younger person, the younger age cohort, and also to speak to congregations who have employed, we'll say, called or an appointment for an older person. You heard the comment I had from an employee of the United Church. Well, I hope I get 5 years out of you. And that's exactly how she said it. And I thought, Pulse, yes, I hope you do get 5 years. I was quite shocked when I heard that. So, yeah, I hope that helps answer the question. We'll talk. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Susan.
Jane, I'm wondering if in your questions, you asked your participants if they had felt called to the party earlier and for some reason had to say no and were only able to accept that invitation at the time of retirement or later. Like, had they experienced that sense of call to ministry, but there were barriers earlier in
Right.
life that stopped them saying yes?
And as you're talking and I'm going through my interview process, I'm going to say no. All of them had previous careers and very profound careers, but then over situations, church life, being at Five Oaks one time and somebody saying, oh, why don't you look at AST? Those kinds of things, it came to light when they were, later in life. They didn't have that call earlier and had barriers, no. I can say that from the answers I got from them, but that was not a specific question I asked them, no.
So in the form of kind of reverse ageism, I was familiar with an Anglican congregation that once had two people apply. One was a young priest with a family, and the other was an older priest. And the congregation said, we're going to pick the older priest because we're an old congregation. Any comments about that?
Maybe he was like me.
That's right.
He could very well have impressed them with his energy, with his experience around good and bad, conflict resolution and life experience around, dealing with children in congregations. That's sometimes scary. And they could have children and they're thinking, do we want a mature aged person there? But, grandma's grandpa's, hello. So I think it just is the way the person presents themselves. I think life experience as Gordon experienced, I think it is huge in any vocation. So yeah.
Cool. Any other questions? So I just want to build on the last one and then this would be it. So how would we calibrate? Was there a question?
No, I thought there was, sorry.
How would we calibrate? And I think it's really important to calibrate life experience. People bring a lot of life experience. How do we calibrate that and bring that to the candidacy board and to the church? I mean, there's lots of experience.
Well, I think we have to look at ministry itself. The whole of ministry. What do we do? What do we offer? The services, the relationships. I think a big piece of that is our relationship with people in our faith, with God. What was the question? I got on my own tangent. I'm sorry.
It happens as I get older, I forget.
Maturity.
When you get to be my age, you can do that. No, it's really about life. How do we calibrate life experience?
Oh, how do we
Should
calibrate? How do you calibrate that? I have someone who has an answer for that right here. Can I ask Angela?
Sure.
Angela, shout it out or come on down. You're gonna need a mic?
Okay, here we go. This is tag. This is like all tag team stuff. Thanks a lot.
I'm one of those people who was not late for the party. I was very late to the party. and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Well, we're glad you're here at the party.
One of the ways you tell it is if you have a set of competencies and you measure against the competencies. And the United Church has very good competencies for ministry. And to my knowledge, they are not used effectively. So that's where I would suggest you begin, because those are already developed. And there are ways to use them effectively.
That's absolutely right.
That's-
Thank you,
that's-
Angela.
That's a wonderful answer. I mean, look, this is the vanguard of the work we're trying to do here, right?
Mhm.
In my experience, the MDiv is designed for 22-year-old male. Really. And what we've really tried to do at AST is alter that, shift it, change how we do it. And, you know, we've got people who come with nursing backgrounds, CEO backgrounds, incredible experience, histories of teachers, so many talents, so many gifts. And yet, you know, when you go through candidacy board, it's true for Anglicans too. When we go through the postulacy process, you're treated like you're a 22-year-old male. Do you fit this model? If you don't, there's a problem. I'm in there. Okay, you don't have to answer that, because what I really appreciate, or do you want to?
No, I don't think I'll go any further.
I love you. Okay. But no, but that's the vanguard. That's the door you've opened for us, really, Jane, in a really monumental way. Your enthusiasm, your energy, and also the way you picked up the energy of your participants spoke volumes. The key is relationship and living as fully as you possibly can throughout life. Kathleen White, you mentioned, says, you know, one of the great things about people who are a little bit older entering ministry is they've known God a little long.
Oh, isn't that wonderful? And it helps that I had the 4 best participants.
Thank you so much.